So we have Visual Studio Code, which is the standard editor. I'd recommend you use. There's Beekeeper and Elephant SQL. Daniel explained this yesterday. Beekeeper is for us to test the database and like a nice user interface instead of typing SQL queries every time. And Elephant SQL is to make it easier to host your database without you setting it up locally on your computer. And Postman, as we've used on the Node.js day, is to test our API before linking it up with our front end. So what will we be building today? Let me just change what I'm sharing. Change my entire screen. So over the course of this week, over the course of this week, we've covered React. We've covered Node. We've also covered Postgres. So these three are three separate parts of the stack. So this is for the front end, which is what the user sees. Node is for the back end, and this is our database. So today we'll be combining all three and linking it up into one application. I think you've sort of noticed the theme of this week is mainly about food and recipes. So we're going to be building a recipe portal and linking it up with a database. So the data you see on the front end actually comes from a database. I'm going to start from scratch here, but from scratch as in we'll be starting from where we stop on React, where we have a user interface like this. Start it up. So we have this sort of like it's still starting that server. Get a sort of app, and then you can search for it's a pretty simple, just an app where you can just print out all the recipes you have. We won't be focusing a lot on the design. It may not look as great because this is not a CSS workshop, but we will be giving you a bit of pre-built CSS like the one that's already in app.css. So if you go to our GitHub repository right now, you can actually grab that CSS file and the starter for today. So assuming you haven't attended the React workshop. As for Node.js, the backend, I will be starting completely from scratch because I'll be starting completely from scratch because we're going to be connecting a database and stuff like that. So this is going to be the structure of today. I keep typing in this. Okay. So we're going to start with, first of all, design our backend, design the backend, not actually code, design the backend. Then we're going to go and write the routes. Connect to then we have to go ahead and write the front end and then link up the two. So design, write the routes, write the front end, and then you go ahead and link up the two. So we're going to be going over the full process as we speak. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the backend because that's usually the most important part of an application. I'll just open a folder on my desktop. And okay, so you can go and make a folder in your desktop wherever you want. So I'm going to make a new folder and I'm going to call this the backend. So I'm going to say m2dir backend. And then I've made that folder, so I'm going to go into that folder. Okay. And in this backend, I am going to type in npm init to initialize my backend repository. So my backend name is going to be my recipe app backend. Version, no version, description, the backend for my recipe. I'll make this bigger so you can see recipe app. Entry point is standard index.js, test command, no test command, no Git repository for now, no keywords. I'm going to put my name, no license, and you should get as Sean has mentioned, you should be able to get a sort of a sample of the package for JSON. And yes, okay. How many of you have created this so far? Y for yes and for no. Let's see in the chat. If you've come this far and you've set up your backend repository from scratch. Okay, I only see 3 yeses. Everyone else, I think, actually npm init should not take this long because we're not actually initializing any node modules, so it should be pretty fast. Okay, let's go ahead and open up VS Code. As I said on in the earlier days, you can open up your repository inside VS Code either two ways. Yes, I am the author. You can either go File, Open, and then you can choose your folder here, which is what you could do. Or you could just, if you've configured your part already, you just need to type in code dot, and a VS Code window will automatically show up. For those of you who haven't attended the Node.js workshop, it's fine. We have the package.json file that pretty much explains, all the stuff here, the details about the app. So when someone new looks at this package.json file, they'll be able to tell what the app is about and how to start and run and test the app. So yeah, there's a bunch of details already set for you. So let's go ahead and install our first dependency for today, which is, as expected, Express. npm install Express. Just type npm install Express. I usually recommend you have one terminal on the side and then one code editor, so you don't need to switch between the two frequently. Just keep both side by side. We'll be using the terminal a lot today. So npm install Express. Then go ahead to your package.json file and then type in dev, which is for development, and then go ahead and type nodemon index.js. For this, we first have to make our index.js file. Let's go ahead and do that. Index.js. Wait, completely starting from scratch this time. Okay. So package lock. Okay. Right. Okay, so we have index.js and package.json file. Who has the two now? Yes, Y for yes, and for no. Do you have these two files? Okay, yes. Okay, let's start. Nice. Okay, so we have index.js file. Okay, now just type in const express. Let's import express. So if you just open up your thing, and then you'll be able to see all the packages you have installed. So we'll be using express, which is our wrapper for the API. Then let's create our app. Const app is equal to express. Okay. Then we forgot this that day. Let's not forget it now. If you want to test using Postman, you have to do express.json. What this line basically does is it's telling the app, okay, fine, whatever requests come in with a body, take it from the body and convert it to JSON for me. So it's easier to do. So app produce express.json and also do an app.use express.url encoded send it to, not false. This what it basically does is like in Postman, there's the www form URL encoded tab. What this does, it makes sure that you can grab data from there and test out your API easily. So make sure these 4 lines are there. I'll just put it in there. Let's put this before that also, doesn't really matter. We did last time. Okay, then let's go ahead and let's talk about our routes. So we have first route, which is going to be get all recipes, and this is going to be a // get recipes out of just a normal recipes route. So if we get something like app.get recipes, then we'll send back all the recipes in our database. We don't have a database yet. We'll configure that in a bit. Let's just write our routes first, so we know what we're going to do. As I said, we can use a router. Should we do that? Okay, yeah, let's go make a router. So const recipe router is equal to express.router. As I explained, it'll help you diversify your app into multiple different modules or have their own router, so you can organize the code in a neat way. Okay, so whenever you get a request that starts with a recipe, you have to use the recipe router. That's what you're telling the application. And that's finally at the end of the page. Obviously, you should do a app.listen. So app.listen, which is having, you hover over it, you can see I listen for connections. So app.listen at 3000. Wait, frontend is running on 3000 now. Let's use something else. Let's use 5000. And let's do a callback function that prints out what port we're on. So let's just do a console.log. I am listening on 5000. Telling the app to listen on 5000, and if that works out, then go ahead and print it out. So at this point, if you type in your console npm run dev, you should be able to see I am listening on 5000. Who sees this? Why for yes and for no? Okay. And no one else? Let me see the code again, sure. Actually, I will make a paste pane later during the break so you guys can catch up. Okay. So if you see this so far, then sort of everything's going well. So we have, let's make the Raspberry routes then. Raspberry router dot get. If you get just a plain nothing, or you get or you want to get /recipes, then you go ahead and write a request handler for this request. Response. Okay, so this will send back all the recipes. Yeah. Okay, then let's go ahead and get a single recipe. The front end won't be using this route, but let's just do it anyway. Recipe /id, and same thing, request response. Join, okay. Response, and then we have other route. Let's make a new recipe. So this is get a single recipe by ID. Okay, and then the next one would be create a new recipe. There's a post request. Post create a new recipe. Recipe router dot post, and then you get a /recipe. Okay, then let's go ahead and do a request and response. Okay, that's for creating a recipe, and let's do a final one for delete. We won't do update because it's pretty much the same, and the front end doesn't need it, so we won't do an update. Delete a recipe by its ID. Let's just do a delete route. I don't know whether this is deprecated or not, but I think it should be fine. Recipe /ID. Request response. Okay, so we have all the routes set up. That's it. That's the entire backend. That actually puts stuff inside here. This is the core of the backend. So all database operations are going to be called inside these callback functions, inside these routes. So we're going to be setting up our database first. So let's go over to Elephant SQL. Right, I put this. Okay, let's just go to Elephant SQL. I asked you guys to make an account just now. If you haven't, I'll just guide you to it. Okay, I've already logged in. And this is the one I made for the workshop that day, and the one that Daniel was teaching. So this is the one. If you want, you can use the same one, but I would recommend creating a new one, because let's create a Tiny Turtle one, and I'm going to call it Recipe Portal. No tags. Tiny Turtle is the free version. Just make this. Select the reason. I choose whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Okay. On AWS, create the instance. I have 2 instances now. Recipe Portal and Test App. Let's go ahead and configure Recipe Portal. You click on it, you should be able to see Tiny Turtle on the side, which is the free plan. Your server, your region, your database password and username. Don't use mine. It obviously won't work on your side, but how many of you have gotten to this page? Why for yes and for no? Yes, yes, okay, nice. So I'm gonna take this thing here, take this thing. Okay, I'm gonna copy this thing, just grab it, copy it, keep it in the clipboard, and go and dump it up here. I will tell you what to do with it, just dump it here for now. Dump it and then comment it out. So it doesn't interfere with the code. Okay, so this is the Postgres connections thing. So anywhere in the world, no matter where in the world your database is connected, this thing is the only thing you need to connect to your database. So let's go over the format of this thing. Let me just find the exact format. Yeah, it's yeah. So I want to Stack Overflow about this. So your Postgres connection thing is gonna be your username. Ignore this. Comment this out. Okay. So your first part of your connections thing is your username, which is the one that's randomly assigned to you by SQL. After the colon is gonna be your password, which is a randomly generated string generated by SQL. And after this is gonna be your host. So your host is like on which server your DB is running. For example, if you're running your Postgres locally, like I usually do, like if you have Postgres installed like me, then you would see localhost here because it's running on your local computer. But since ours is running on AWS, this is an AWS address that's run by SQL. And the last part is going to be your database name. You won't see recipe portal here because yeah, it's a randomly generated name, even no matter what we give the instance. So let's go ahead and connect our database to our app. And to use Postgres with Node.js, there are a few ways. You can either use SQLize, which is an ORM on its own. So you can search what an ORM is. ORM. But yeah, it gives it to you. So this is SQLize, which is what I usually use for a lot of big projects. But SQLize makes you define a model, give it a structure, migrate, and so on. We don't need this much power right now, but this is something to check out later. Let's put a link here. Okay, something to check out later. Today we're just going to be using PG, which is Postgres. So let's start. This is just an ordinary PG module. Just type npm install PG. So install PG. So PG is the native Postgres model. Just type that in, npm install PG, and you should be done with yeah. Okay, so let me just read all this. Make sure you have this thing right here, these two, so you know how to refer to it. So this is the format of your SQL string. I mean your connection string. In case someone wants to refer, that's how Postgres arranges the thing. So now let's actually set up a connection. Let's import Postgres. So const pool, which is what we use to create the require pg. Let's not install pg dot pool. Okay, this is a pool is what we use to like maintain one connect. What's the other? Just stop the error there. I can help you out. A lot of errors. Hey Daniel, can you help me, ma? Maybe give him a different meet link or something. Are you there? Okay, got it. Okay, so pool is what we use to like set up one connection and then make multiple requests at once. Because the database is hosted on a cloud, it's sitting somewhere else, and your backend is sitting somewhere else. So every time your front end wants to make a request to the backend, we don't want to set up a new connection every single time. We want the backend to connect and keep connected the whole time the thing is running. So to establish one connection and maintain it, we use a pool, and we pool together queries at one time. So let's create a pool instance. So const pool is going to be a new pool, and this takes in a configuration object. So let's pass in our user, and our user this time, as I said, it's going to be this random string here. Use your own, don't use mine. Password is going to be this string before the @ if you get an error later, that's because you probably made a typo somewhere here. And this is just going to be backend at .db.elephantsequel.com. Okay, and then the last bit is going to be the database, which is going to be HBC, whatever it is. And then, okay, close this up. Now, let's establish the connection. We got the user, password, host, and database. Let's just run npm run dev and let's see what breaks. Okay, if you see no errors here, which means that your connection has been successfully established. Let's say I changed something here, maybe Z or something. Technically, wait, someone else's instance. HPCFM. Okay, here. Just type that in. So const pool is equal to new pool, user, password, host, and database. And you should be able to connect to the database of, one we talked about. So let's copy the string and let's just go set the database up before we actually do some queries on it. Most importantly, making the recipes table. Okay, so let's copy the string, go to beekeeper, and when you open up beekeeper, you'll just see this, what is this? Yeah, beekeeper, you see the connection type. Say import from URL and paste in your connection string here. Just do an import and just type connect. And you should be in, and all the tables should be printing out here at the database. So let's go ahead and create our first table. Am I moving too faster? How many people have set up beekeeper already and you are in your beekeeper interface? Should I slow down a bit? Y if everything's okay, or N if you guys are stuck somewhere. Everything's okay. Missed about the poll. Okay, wait, let me give you the. Yeah, I give you the exact one. You connect to mine. Don't connect to mine. Wait, I'll give you. Just change this to user. Enter your password based on the one that it's in your connection string. I repeat, don't use mine. Host database. Okay, let's copy this in for you. Replace the word user with your actual username, the one that comes from your interface. Okay, so we're in one sec, let me just create the table. Okay, yeah. Let's create our table. There will be three fields in our table. There will be name, cooking time, and instructions. Name will be a string, a text field. Cooking time will be a decimal, and ingredients will be a string also. Let's do a create table. Create table recipes. I'll copy the query for you in a bit. Wait a second. Create table recipes. First one is going to be ID, which is going to be auto-generated ID, serial, primary key, name. You can format it. Name is going to be text. Cooking time is going to be a decimal, and ingredients is going to be text also. Okay, so we have an ID which is auto-generated. Every time it automatically increments is a primary key. If you don't know what a primary key is, you can refer to yesterday's notes or just Google it. It's basically the field that that automatically defines a particular row in the database. So there's the ID, there's the name of the recipe, there's the cooking time, and the ingredients. And if you haven't seen this sort of syntax before, this is a very simple SQL create table syntax. So basically create table, name of the table, then the name of the field, the type of the field. Basically serial means auto-generated and auto-increments. What type, does it have any special characteristics? Is it a primary key? And the name of the field, the type of data type of the field, name of the field, data type, name. So pretty simple there. Put a semicolon at the end of it and just type hit run. Okay, so yeah, if it's executed successfully and you look on your left, you should be able to see your recipes table with the int4, text, numeric, text. Who sees this now? Can you see the new recipes table here? Let me just copy the query for you. If I'm going too fast, please slow me down. We'll give it around 2 or 3 more minutes so everyone can get to this stage. So if you've created your table, type Y, yes. If not yet, and N. Create your table, okay. Okay, nice, nice. I'm waiting for everyone else. This is very important. We need to have our table before we can test anything. Yeah. In that time, Amino just prepped a query to insert some dummy stuff. Name, cooking time. Yeah, ingredients. So it's going to be strings now. So you don't need to copy. I'm just trying to set this up. So later, 5 hours. Okay. Name, cooking time, ingredients. Okay. Okay. So has everyone already set up their recipes table? As in here, can you see your parameters? If you have, just type Y inside. If not, I'll wait a bit. Any yeses? That's all okay. Okay, nice. Okay, let's go ahead and insert. Okay, I know I just copied a big chunk here, but I explain what's going on. I had to test it first. So insert into public dot. Okay, here's the thing. How many of you have used the IBM DB2 before? How many of you have taken the database fundamental subject? I mean, anywhere. I mean, whether it's an MMU or just any database subject before. If you have, yes. If not, no. Okay. So you might have seen the insert somewhere, but most likely you would have been using IBM DB2 or MySQL. So they don't usually teach Postgres, but we're using Postgres. So the variations are slightly different. First of all, in order to insert into a table on a remote server, we have to index into it. So since recipes is a table inside a public database, we need to index into public.recipes. And to be on the safe side, all the names of your tables, names of your database should all be inside a string. In Postgres, just to be safe. So public.recipes means like the recipe table is inside the public database. Okay, then the columns we're inserting into name, cooking time, and ingredients, and the values for each column. So what's the name of the recipe? What's the cooking time in a decimal? And what are the ingredients? Ingredients just a string like that. 2 bars of chocolate, 2 cups of flour, 2 spoons of butter, and some sugar. And it should return back, I mean, once you insert, it should return back the ID, name, cooking time, and ingredients. Okay, so if you go ahead and run this query, you should be able to see your database with chocolate cake 3.5 and 2 bar. I'll just copy the query for you. I know it's quite a bit. Just copy this inside. Feel free to change it however you want. It can be chocolate cake, it can be anything, just as long as like you follow the fields. If you want, let's just multiply the data. Just make a few like vanilla. And what kind of cake is that? Strawberry cake. Another one. Let's make another dessert. Like let's make cookies. Ingredients are the same. I just assume ingredients are the same for everything. Okay, and then just make another one. Like I don't know. Make however much you want. Right, doesn't matter. I want to make another one called blondies. And let's just change the cooking time to like blondies are just 2 bars of 2 cups of flour and a lot of butter baked in the oven. Okay. Returning ID, name, cooking time, ingredients. Okay, and maybe the blondies take a bit shorter, just two. Okay, so we have already inserted 4. You guys can insert as many as you want. Just go to another one to see all the ones you've added and just type select all from recipes. Okay, and just put run. You should be able to see how many ever recipes you've added. So how many people can actually see the recipes, all your recipes? Yes, no. Y for yes and for no. If you can see your recipes. Don't worry about the exact recipe name. You can use whatever you want as long as you have a few populated to test later. So I can insert a few, but I've only inserted 4 because it's enough for me. So we have our database, we have our backend structure, and we have some data in our database. Let's actually connect the two now. So let me just copy the insert items or data inside there. And then the query to get all the recipes is this. Just if you want to test, just type that in. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to our code. Let's do the first thing. Let's get all the recipes, everything. Let's grab everything first, everything we've inserted. It's pretty simple. It's just a pull dot query. So you scroll down, you can see all the methods we have, event listeners, and all this stuff. Just do a pull dot query. And if you hover over query, you'll see the parameters. The first one is going to be how to show the first one is going to be a string with an SQL string, and the second one is going to be data that you're going to add inside. We'll have a look at that later. Let's just do a simple SQL statement here first. Select all from recipes. You don't need to use capital letters. SQL doesn't really care, but I'm just scared of not using capital letters because I don't like SQL. So error results, and then let's go ahead and do a callback for this. Okay. So what's happening here? The first one is going to be the SQL statement we're going to send to the database, and the second one is going to be a callback, which is made up of the error and results. So the error object will be populated if there's an error. If something went wrong, then the error object will be populated, and result is going to be the data that comes back from the database. So let's just do a simple error checking here. So if something went wrong, if there's an error, then you go ahead and do a response.status 500. What is 500? 500 is the internal server error, which means something went wrong on the backend side. Okay. If something went wrong, then just send back to the user, something went wrong, I can't send you data. But if everything went okay, no error, then let's send back the data. We got a response.status 200.send results. So okay, we got this right. Let's actually test it out. Let me just copy this code here. We should have that for the get all recipes. Let's actually go to our Postman. Once again, everything okay so far? Have you guys typed in this part of the code? I for yes and for no. Or okay, nice. Let's actually test it out. Remember, we're running on 5,000, so we have to call a 5,000 route. So let's do HTTP localhost 5000 slash recipe slash recipes, and it's going to be a get request, right? There's no body because it's a get request. Let's make sure everything's running okay, and all we have to do is type enter, and technically we should be able to get back a lot of data. But I'll show you how to filter this later. Right now we get a lot of really a lot of unnecessary data. So what does Postgres give us back? It gives us back the command we used. In this case, we use select, not insert or update. The number of rows it returned, the order ID. I think this is because of the ordering, and then the actual rows. So each row in the database is actually a single JSON object. So 4 rows is going to be a list of 4 JSON objects, and each object has an ID, a name, a cooking time, and ingredients. And if you've noticed, since you're sending back as JSON, everything is automatically stringified. So even though 3.5 is actually a decimal, in this case it's a string. So sends back the rows as an array. It also sends back the fields, which is basically like telling us what type of data is inside that field. So for example, it's an ID, it's a text, what's a table ID, column ID, data type ID, and so on. And some parsers and some lot of random stuff we don't need. But say we only want to send back the actual data, I mean the rows, then just do a dot rows here. Dot rows, and then do the request again. And this time you should only be able to see the rows in database. Okay, so how many of you are here? Why for yes and for no? Have I moved way too fast? Yes. Okay, nice. If you've come this far, a big chunk is already done. Let's just wait a bit for everyone to catch up. Let's see here. And auth failed. Okay, that means your password is wrong. Check your connection string and make sure you're using the right format: username, password, hostname, database name. You get an auth failed, which means that you can't connect database at all. Make sure you're following the right connection string format. I'll put this again. Because like Postgres, I mean, Elephant SQL will give you back a string, but you have to convert it to, each part of the string based on the, yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's do the next route, which is going to be getting a recipe by its ID. Okay. Then we'll go on a short break maybe. Let's do a poll. Same thing, dot query. Okay, this time we have to okay, this time what's different? What's different this time is that this time the request is actually going to give us some data, which is like the ID of the recipe it wants. So it's going to be inside the parameter here. So as I said, we have to grab it from there. So that ID is equal to request dot params dot ID. But one thing to note is that the param will come as a what do you call it? The param will come as a string, but in the database it's actually stored as a number, as an integer. So we have to use JavaScript to pass it into an integer. So pass int, grab the ID, and store it in a variable. Then do a pull dot query and do a select call from requests, recipes. This time I put a where clause where ID is equal to, okay, this is interesting. We have to pass in data from the outside. And then the next parameter is going to be the list of variables we're passing in. In this case, I'm only doing ID. I'm going to do ID here. And the next one is going to be error and results. Okay, so if error, do the same thing, same standard. Response, what status, error code 500, let's send error, something went wrong. Okay, if everything went okay, then send back the data. Response dot status 200, which means a success photo basically, and send results. This is going to be yeah, results of those. Okay, put query, and then yeah, let's try this out with a recipe slash recipe 2. You could be able to get an array with only recipe 2. If we do a recipe 3, maybe you should be able to get back recipe 3. What if we enter something that doesn't exist? What happens? We get back an empty array. Get back recipe 0 doesn't exist also, empty array. Recipe 2 exists, we'll get back a list containing only that particular JSON object. And I mean, once you get back the data in such a nice way, it's very easy to print it on the front end, making the flow quite smooth there. Okay, so how many of you have this out working? Let me just copy this in also. So okay, Wi-Fi yes, and for now, does this work? Nice. Okay. If you guys are facing, if you guys get stuck somewhere, or I mean, just let us know. Just put in the chat. Then we can help you out. Cannot get recipe /2. Okay. What could cause this error? Cannot get. Did you try with the boat also cannot? What would call cannot get? Are you calling this correct route? Are you sure you're on 5,000? Make sure you're running on 5,000. So it's actually slash, by the way, this is the router. It's going to be /recipe because it's going to be a router. So the router is going to grab the thing. Where's the router? Okay, yeah, recipe. The router will start with /recipe. So once it sees the /recipe, it will delegate into recipe router. And recipe router will add its own extensions to check. So /recipe is going to be a post here. It's going to be a get. It's going to be /recipes. It's a bit confusing there, but yeah, that's how it's structured. If you want to make it even cleaner, then you can maybe just remove the recipe here, and it's just going to be a /recipe. And then this one is going to be changed to like a post, which is going to be a /. Then you can call it with just /recipe. But that's just, I want to make it easier to read, so I'm going to put it /recipe for now. Make sure you're calling /recipe /2. I know it's confusing, but yeah. Yeah, locals 5,000 /recipe /ID, as in the one I just said. I mean, actually, fun fact, if you just type in this query, you can't even get this. Daniel, can you help me out? If you see what's the issue there? Okay. Fun fact, if you take this this particular string and then you call it from your web browser, you should be able to get back the JSON, because your browser automatically makes your GET request for you. So yeah, that's something interesting. And you have this JSON extension, I think, extension for this, yeah, JSON formatter, and automatically make it look nice for you, and you can see it on your browser. So there we go. So you can be able to now get all the recipes and get a recipe by an ID. Now let's do another important route, which is creating a new recipe. So this, in this case, we're gonna get okay. Let's get a rect name. Name of the recipe is gonna be request.body.name. Rect name. I mean, sorry, rect cooking time is gonna be pass float. It's gonna be a decimal, right? We have to need decimal. Request.body.cooking time, and rect instructions is gonna be a request.body.instructions. So this is a string. By default, Node.js will give you back a string. Cooking time will also come back as a string, but you have to convert it to a float because it's JSON, right? Yeah. And instructions also going to be a string. Since we are doing, yeah, okay. And we can go ahead and create the thing. So it'll be a pull.query, and be an insert into recipes. And what are the fields? Same format as the beekeeper just now, but it's a bit simpler because it makes it simple for you. Yeah. Name, cooking time, and instructions. Okay, this time we got values, and we got values 1, 2, and 3. Values 1, 2, and 3. And what are those values? We're going to pass it in as a list here of all the values. So it's going to be name, cooking time, and instructions. And once that's done, the third one is going to be the callback. Make this full screen. Everything are you wrong? So error. Maybe this one error. Okay, error. Results. And then it's going to be a same thing here. If everything went okay. I mean, if something went wrong, tell the user something went wrong. And send him back the entire message. If not, you just have to send back to the user saying like, response.status. This time we're going to use 201 because 201 is the industry standard for created. So 200 is a successful query generally, and 201 is a status code saying that this resource has been successfully created. So .send, and then you just say new recipe added. Okay, so recipe. So /recipe on localhost 5000. Grab the name, cooking time, and instructions from the body of the request. Do an insert operation, inserting these three and passing in these values. And then take a callback. And if got an error, send to the user got an error. If not, tell the user new recipe added. So let's try this out. Let's go to Postman. Make a new one for this. New tab, post /recipe. Let's do a body. We have used form URL encoded. Later, if this doesn't work, you know why? Because we faced this problem last time. Don't forget the express that URL encoded extended to. Okay, then we just pass in the name. Make sure the formatting okay. Name. Let's create a new recipe. Let's what to call this? Let's try something else this time, like pizza. And cooking time. It's gonna be how much pizza take? 3 hours, no 2 hours or 2 hours. And instructions, it's gonna be sorry, instructions. Sorry, it's ingredients, right? Not instructions. It's ingredients, not instructions. Sorry. Must be careful about this. So yeah, this one, just make sure to change the ingredients on instructions. I forgot we called it ingredients. It's gonna be mozzarella cheese, parmesan, flour. Okay, just these three. Name, cooking time, ingredients, and just send a request. and then it would say new recipe added. Let's say we go back to our original one and just do a /recipe/recipes. You would have a nice surprise now. There'll be a new recipe added with pizza, cooking time 2, ingredients, these are the ingredients. And you can now use this to make as many recipes as you want. I just had to make a post request to /recipe/recipe because you're creating a resource. So if you're able to create a recipe using Postman, a Y for yes and for no. Just copy this code for you. Oh, it stopped me because the thing is too big. Copy in chunks then. I'll just give you this. This is the body of the request. Okay, Y for yes and for no, just tell me. Guys, all okay? Just hit type inside there, yes, everything's okay, and then no if you want me to stop for a bit. Okay. Okay, we're moving a bit too fast, that's why. Just let me know. Interested, you can even check out the different status codes. So like 201 created means like the request has been fulfilled and resulted in a new resource being created. For example, error 404 is like something's not found. Error 500 is for like internal server error, something went wrong in the backend. There's a lot more actually. 400 means missing resources. And yeah, you guys can check it out, HTTP status codes. Okay, shall we move on or you want to wait for a bit to catch up on this? I only see a few yeses. Guys, all okay? Can I go on? Okay, yeah, let's continue. So the last one we're going to be doing for the backend is going to be deleting. And this one, I think you guys might have guessed already. It's the format's exactly the same. So it's going to be a pull query. And this time, instead of just an insert, it's going to be a delete query. Delete from recipes. Okay, where ID is going to be this particular variable we pass in. In this case, just grab the ID again. So that ID is going to be pass int request of params ID. Okay. And then we'll just pass in this data as ID. The last parameter is going to be error and results. So we're going to get same thing. Yeah, it's exactly the same. Exactly the format's exactly the same. Yeah, Copilot did that for me. So if error, then send back the error. We've done this so many times a day. And if everything's okay, then send back the saying to the user that recipe has been deleted. Okay, wait, what's the status code for recipe deleting? Successful delete status code. Oh, 200. Yeah, 200 is fine. Okay. Let's test this out. Let's go to our make a new one. Okay, let's copy this thing and go to a new tab. Make a delete request this time. And then yeah, do a recipe/recipe. Let's delete out the one we just created. Let's delete pizza maybe, or let's delete blondies because yeah, let's delete blondies. Number 4. That's 4, and that's it deleted. Let's make the same get request again. We should not be able to see blondies anymore because blondies is now gone. Are you able to delete a recipe? Y for yes and for no. Let me just copy in this out here. This is the route for delete. Okay. Post again, sure. Getting a bit, Google Meet does not allow me to copy in the whole thing, so I'm just gonna, I'll give you the body for now. This is inside the requester, and then this is the, yeah. So if you're able to delete Y for yes and for no, able to delete. Okay, only 3. A lot of people here, only 3 people able to delete. Okay, you know what? I will copy all this code inside a paste bin right now and give it to you. Okay, so you can you won't get stuck after this. Make a paste bin. And what it is, I'll create a new paste index.js. Okay, I just copy this. You guys can go grab the entire index.js now. But please change the connection string. don't use the same user password post, because it'll mess up my DB. Then change it to yours before you connect and do any deletion. Okay, so we'll go on a 5-minute break. No, let's go on a 5-minute break first. So everyone who's has fallen behind on something or needs to copy in some code or test, then please go ahead and use the paste bin. Just make sure when using the paste bin, uh, don't use the same. Yeah, just make sure to change the user password and your host to whatever Elephant SQL gave you. Don't connect to mine. And just make sure everything's okay. Any questions you can ask. Time now is 5:06. Let's come back at 5:11. And let's move to the front end. Let's see what we can do from the front end now. The backend is kind of done. That's it for the backend. If we have more time later, maybe we can add some authentication. But for now, let's just do the call outs. So, okay, I'll see you guys at 5:11. Just take a break first. Yeah, and if you haven't already, please go and clone the JS Week front end. Let me find the repo for you. This repo right here is where we're going to be starting for today. It's a bit different in the one that Sean covered, but it's pretty much the same. The concept are the same. So this is where we're going to start from. This is the boilerplate I have, and I'm going to start from this. So you guys can go and clone this repo now. Or if you want to follow along from the one you followed to if you followed along on React.js, which is on day 2, then you should be fine. But if you just want to make sure you're on the right track, or you want to make sure this code is the same as mine, then you can go and clone this, because I'll be starting from this for the front end. Okay, it's 5:11. Let's continue. Okay, so how many of you have opened up your front end repo, either cloned or using your own? Y for yes and for no. If you're at your front end now. Okay, yes. Okay, there's more people. Nice. Okay, nice. Okay, I'll give it around 1 or 2 more minutes so you can clone the repo for those of you who haven't. Because a lot of people here, but only a few people are applying, so I'm assuming that. So you can go ahead and clone that repo or use your own. Either one can. Why am I opening inside here? So by default, your React will run on localhost 3000, which is the one that you go to your package.json here. It should be running by default on 3000. Oh, it's not here. Yeah, but the way React is configured, it's going to be on 3000. That's why we moved our backend to 5000. Technically, your port number could be anywhere between 1000. I mean, zero. No, not 0. There are certain ports that are reserved. For example, 5432 is for your Postgres. And if you're using another service like MariaDB or PHPMyAdmin, then it probably has its own port. So you can choose any number between 1 and 10,000, assuming it's not a reserved port for something else already. So like 3,000, 5,000, 4,000 are quite safe because no other system service uses that. So I go to my localhost 5432 now, actually. So I go to my 5432. Technically, this is going to be Postgres, because Postgres is running on 5432. It can't be changed because this is automatically done by Postgres. So yeah, let's just think about port numbers there. Okay, let's go ahead with the front end. You can put this up. This is your backend running on 5000, leave that be. Open another terminal window for your front end, like I have here. Just type npm start. Now your front end is up and running, and just wait for the server to. You should be able to see just the John Doe's recipe app. Okay. Okay, can you guys see this as all? Do you guys see the John Doe's recipe app first? Everything's okay here so far? Everything's okay, just type Y, and if you're still loading this thing, and okay. Okay, now so usually when developing with React, there is like one tip I usually have: keep two terminals. One is to run your code, which is going to be the terminal from which your the localhost is running, and then another terminal either inside your VS Code or another one. Make another one. I'm going to make another one. So this is the one I'm going to use to download my packages and do all the other stuff. And this is the one I'm going to keep my server running on. So this should always be running, and this should only be the one I use when I want to download a package. For the front end, I'm going to install a package called Axios. I'll explain what this is. Just type npm install Axios. Make sure you're on the front end repo, not the back end repo, because back end does not need Axios. The front end needs Axios. Npm install Axios. Oh, that is messy. Okay, just let it run. npm packages usually take a while, so I mean, if it's taking a while, don't worry about it. It happens. It's usually a very big package, Axios. While this is running, let me just tell you a bit about it. What is Axios? Your tab here. So we go to Axios. Yeah, this one. That's the documentation. So it's like pretty simple. It basically allows you to make requests from wherever. It's like HTTP client. So just like we made a request from Postman, we can now make it from Axios or from React to Axios. You want to see the documentation here. Install Axios using npm install Axios, and then let's make a request, post request maybe. So Axios will post, put the request, the string, and put the body of your request, and it's going to return to you a promise, and you can handle the promise however you want. And this will easily integrate with your React frontend. So, which is why Axios is very powerful for making HTTP requests from React. So how many of you have gotten Axios installed? Why for yes and for no? Or it's still running or stuck somewhere? Everything okay? Then yes. If not, no. For those of you who have just joined, you guys can check out two repos here. Just copy it in here. So the first one is the index.js for the backend. The second one is the front end starter. So you guys can clone the two, or want to refer to it also can. Or if you want to watch first and try later, also it's totally fine. Okay, so we have Axios installed. Let's okay, fine. Let's clear some junk here first. Let's clear all our recipes. No need initial state. So let's change that to a use state instead of a list full of objects like the one we just did. Just delete it and just put an empty object inside here. So basically, this what it tells React is like this particular state variable is going to hold a list of objects. Just put a list with one empty object inside there. If you save and go back to your front end, oh sorry, it's yeah, because it's empty, right? So it doesn't work here. So you're able to get like an empty page here. If you just do an empty list, then you should be getting an empty page because there's no data loaded. Okay. So let's go ahead and make our first request, which is to grab all the recipes. Let's do that in a use effect. So you guys still remember what a use effect is and why we use it? So as I said, a use effect is the it helps us run certain things at different parts of for example, when something changes, then we go ahead and use a use effect to run something when, how to explain this? Okay, let's say we pass in a dependency list at the end here, and let's say we pass in a variable called your name. Every time the value inside your name changes in your code, whatever function you pass in here will automatically run. So you can console log, you can fetch something, you can do something in response to a variable changing. If you leave this second list empty, just an empty list, this means that this particular use effect will only run the first time. When your component mounts, let's say your console log, this component has mounted or is up and running, keep it simple. Okay, just to refresh your page, open your inspect, your dev console, and you should be able to see this component is up and running here. This means that this particular callback only runs the first time your component mounts. Let's say you pass in a value here. Every time this value changes across your code base, then this function will run. So basically the second parameter is the dependency list. The dependencies are like the variables on which React will be listening for changes on. So if one of these variables changes value, then this use effect will automatically retrigger and something will run. So in this case, we only want to get data inside our component when the thing starts up. So let's just do a loading. Once loading, set loading. This is a common design pattern in React, which is able to tell the state type. If you're still fetching from the API, by default, it's always true. Once the data is fetched, then only show data on your screen. So you'll see something like loading. You see a loading printed here or a spinner. And once your data comes in, then that spinner turns off and you actually see your front-end view. Because if you don't put the loading and you directly show the data here without your data actually coming in from the backend, you just end up with a bunch of errors saying that this is not defined, that not defined. And your user will see like a blank screen for a long time before they actually see something. So to check for the loading state, we use loading and set loading. Okay, so by default, it's by default loading. Let's make our first request to get all the recipes. So axios.get, okay, http localhost 5000 /recipe/recipes, and request. It's not the backend. This is something else. Okay, get this dot then. It's a promise, right? So data will come back as a promise. Console data. No need to put anything. It's console. Okay. Or you need to restart the thing because you have a new package and you restart the application. Oh, it's okay. Okay. Good. So if you install a new package in npm, always restart your server because your server has to rebuild, recompile with the new dependencies. So let's go to our dev console now, and let's see what. Okay, cause error. Okay, nice. Okay, forgot about this. Let's go to our backend and let's fix the cause thing. So what's happening is when you first start out, you'll probably see this error a lot. What this basically means is like your front end is running on 3000, your backend is running on 5000. 3000 and 5000 don't want to talk with each other by default. They don't trust each other. So we have to tell our 5,000, our backend, that you know what, you can trust 3,000. This guy, he's gonna call data from you. You're gonna trust him. So we have to go to our backend and actually configure this. So let's go to the backend, stop the server, and type in npm install cause. And then yeah, cause. Let's forget how to configure this. Then at the top, you just have to type in app.useCause. Just do a import cause. Once cause is equal to require cause, and then just do an app.useCause. So if you guys are familiar with app.use, remember I said, right, it's about middleware. So before anything in this server runs, the cause will run. So cause will basically tell the server like accept requests from anyone. If you don't pass in anything, basically you're telling it to like accept requests from anyone. You can also like pass in a list of origins you allow, but let's just allow for anyone now. And let's restart our server and npm run dev. This is our backend, not our frontend, by the way. Running on 5,000. Okay. Let's go back and make the request again. This time we should see some data here. Data. Okay, I know that was very fast, but is there anyone who got this fast with me so far? You can see the stuff in the console. YFAS and for no. If not, I'll wait. I went damn fast there because I skipped out the cost thing totally. So do you guys see the data inside your console now coming from the backend? YFAS and for no. You're seeing data. Okay, not sure. Here's the front end code. Just copy this for you. Put that inside your app.js function, use effect, and make sure you import use effect from React. So what I'm telling React to do is like as soon as the component boots up, go and fetch the data from this recipe route, take the response back and just console it out, log it out the console. Don't do anything with it, just console log it. We don't set the state, we don't print it out, just go ahead and do a console log. Okay. I'll wait 2 minutes here so you guys can. And the backend only code you need to change is you need to put in the cost there. I'll put a nice comment here so you know. CORE stands for cross-origin resource sharing. And that cost policy is actually a very big headache usually because a lot of APIs will have cost issues. So whenever you're trying to make a request, you have to make sure the API is allowing your domain to make that request. So you can even configure your cost in such a way where you can pass in forgot what's the origin. You can pass in like an origin only allow from 3,000 or something like that. If you do something like this, then it will only allow you to make a request from 3,000. But in our case, let's just use any route is fine. Yeah, you guys can check out costs. Because 3,000 does not cost 5,000 because the browser is scared or the backend is scared that you're trying to call the API from unauthorized places, so it automatically blocks you unless you tell it not to. So you have to use cost to tell it not to. I'll wait a bit here. Okay, data in a console. Sure. You just get this big dump of config data and a massive JSON object, basically. Okay, got it. Nice. Okay, let's go forward then. So now the data just coming to the console. You're not actually storing it anywhere. You're not printing it out using the state. So let's go ahead and fix that. So that's actually, because the format data is like response.data. So the actual data is actually inside the data property of that object. So you would do something like set recipes, okay, and then you would do response.data, move the console out. So once you set the state and everything's okay, then go ahead and say loading is false, so your application is already loaded. And then here, so just before you print out all the recipes, you go ahead and do make sure the ingredient cooking time is actually not camel case, it's normal. I won't shoot a backend anymore, we don't need backend. Okay, camel case is going to be cooking time, no, just full lowercase letters. Ingredients also full lowercase, recipe.name, everything's okay, make sure the parameters are that. Then here, before you actually rendering on the state, you make sure it's not loading. So if loading, I mean if loading, you go ahead and show this thing called this type for div, say loading dot dot dot. Okay, and if it's not loading, do a ternary operator, and then this unexpected word loading. What's going on? Usually it messes up the expected or two lowercase. What the issue was. So if it's okay, actually, it's a ternary operator actually. So if it's loading, then you go ahead and type in div for loading, and if it's not, then you go ahead and print out the thing up. So it might this it looks damn weird, right? Let me just explain how ternary operators work. Yes, again, ternary operator in React. So we check out the conditional rendering docs in React. You can do something like so like if a user is logged in, then you go and set the logout button. If not, show him the login button. You can even do like this and operations, like if this property is met, then show this. If this property, if this particular statement evaluates the false, then don't show it. And you can even do ternary operators, yeah, like this condition true false. So you put a condition first. If the condition is met, then show what's in the true. If the condition evaluates the false, then show what's in the false. So like you even put this inline, like the user is, if he's logged in, then you can say currently. If he's not logged in, then you can say not. It's like really cool. You can do a lot of powerful stuff inline itself. That's exactly what we did here. It's like if the loading is set to 2, I mean if the thing is still fetching, then you go ahead and just print loading. If the loading is set to false, which means the data is already set, we already have data from the backend. Now just print out the recipes map it out filter include map. Okay. So technically, if we do this, we should be able to, oh yeah, it's okay. What's going on here? Oh boy, what's this? I think. Oh, I know why. I know why. Because the ingredients is supposed to be in this case ingredients. Yeah, we initially planned it to be a JSON object. Now just a string. So ingredients is not going to be a map. It's just going to be just plain ingredients. Okay. So now if you refresh, instead of loading, then print this. See, nice. Chocolate cake, strawberry cake, cookies, and pizza. So make sure you go to your recipe.js and just print just name, ingredients, cooking time. What we're doing here is we're basically filtering first to make sure that we can search. Then we make sure that the search query is included inside that particular name. Then we map it out. We do a dot map and we do a dot recipe. And for each recipe, we call the recipe component on its own. Recipe component with name, recipe.name, ingredients, recipe.ingredients, cooking time, recipe.cooking time. And then this particular thing will print it out. So the props that are passed in from the app.js are actually just name, ingredients, and cooking time. And we can destructure them like this. We can even just do props.name. We can even do this. It won't make a difference. You see, it won't make a difference. If you're trying to be fancy in JavaScript, we can do something called destructuring an object. So if you have an object like, example, let's make an object here called me, and I put my my details inside here. Okay, so if you have an object like this, and I want to just grab out the name and the gender, then I could either do me.name. Let's say I want to load it a different variable. I can either do me.name, or I can just like destructure it out of there. So like const equals me. So like I could destructure the name and the gender from here, name and the gender from here, and I can just print out the name and the gender. So if you have a massive object and you don't want to do a dot and you just want to take it out immediately and store it in a variable, then you can just go ahead and do an array, object destructure an object. So you can just grab the properties out of there. So name and gender are now their own variables. You can even do this for a list. Let's say you have a list here, for example, I know my list is 1, 2, 3, and you want to take out each element of the list and put it in its own variable. You can even do something like element 1, element 2, and element 3, as Sean explained that day. Then you just do a my list. So like the first element of the list will be assigned to element 1. The second element, will be assigned to element 2, and the third element will be assigned to element 3. So this is destructuring a list. Restructuring a list. So I think JavaScript can do even crazier stuff. You can even like destructure a very nested object also. So you can check that out in the documentation. So it's interesting to see. Okay, so that's destructuring. So we have a form here. A simple field here. If it's loading, print loading. If not, then filter it out. Then map it out to the body. So you will have something like this. Refresh the page, loading, and once it's loaded, then print this out. Want to filter, can filter also. I only want cookies, I only show cookies. I only want pizza, and only show pizza. And so on. It's a cooking time, let's put a few hours there. So it'll be cooking time is going to be cooking time, HRS for hours. And you have hours, nice. Okay. Okay, so how many of you have gotten at this stage, or have I moved way too fast? Why for yes and for no, if you're able to see this nice from the back end. Only 2 people. 3 people. 27 people here, only 2. show the code again in case you want to see. I'll split this to the right, and I'll put the app on the left so you can see the. And I change the name to your name. Don't put John Doe. Put your, make it personalized. Able to see, yeah. Okay. Okay. Now let's implement the delete. So let's say I click a button here. I want this to disappear. I want this to disappear from my database also. How to do this? This is a bit okay. We need to pass down the state. So we need to the recipes are all stored inside the parent component inside this recipes variable, and each recipe itself is its own component. So the button is going to be inside. Yeah, the button is going to be inside here, but it has to reflect in the top level state. Okay. So we first have to write a function called handle delete. So like handle delete, and this would be a handle delete, and this will take in an ID. So this function sorry, talking too fast. Function will do two things. The first one is will delete from the backend and also delete from the state. So delete from backend and delete from local state, which means this variable. Obviously, first delete from backend. So it'll come back an ID. So we just do a axios dot delete. Yeah, what this is? Yeah, this thing. HTTP locals 5000 slash recipe slash recipe slash plus ID concatenate new string. There is no body obviously, and then dot then response. So if response dot status is equal to what's the 200 because it's successfully deleted, and go ahead and delete from local state. Else you can just console log what went wrong. You can just print the console.log response dot whatever. Yeah, just print out a response if something went wrong. Then you can see on the console like what was the error and try to fix it later. If successfully deleted, then okay, then go ahead and do it from local state. How do it from local state? Do recipes. Okay, so basically set recipes here, and then recipes dot filter where this recipe's ID does not match the ID of the one that we're talking about, because each ID if you see it comes back as a what do you call it, a string, right? Yeah, comes back as a string, so we have to filter based on that. So let's console log and see how it comes back as. Array. Oh, it's actually a number. Okay, yeah, it's a number. Doesn't matter. Okay. JavaScript is smart enough to convert it to a number for us. Only the backend it doesn't. Yeah. Okay, so we got the handle delete function ready for us. But now that presents a big question. This handle delete function is inside app.js, but the button to actually delete, delete button, I'm gonna put it here. The delete button, which is gonna be inside a child component. First problem, how are we gonna pass this delete function down there? Let's do delete button. That does not look very good. That's because there's no CSS. Yeah, okay. Don't worry about the CSS first. Put the button inside. Yeah, let's just move the element. Okay, who wants to try answering this question? How to pass this down? I mean, The function is like at the top level component, but the button to call this function is inside the child. How to call this from the child? Anyone is I'm looking at the chat now. Any ideas? Props. Yes, yes, very good. Props. So just like name, ingredients, cooking time are all props. Yeah, yeah. By the way, Jun Seong, it's already lifted. The state is already up there. Lifting the state, what he's talking about is like instead of storing local state inside the recipe component, we're storing all the data in our app inside the parent, and we're passing in that data, the state from the parent component down to children as state. As props, and then they render based on the props they are given. Instead of this component itself going and making its own API request and having its own state. So in this case, the state is already lifted. The answer is actually props. We have to pass in handle delete down as a prop. But it's going to be a bit more complicated than that, because look at it. The handle delete function here takes in an ID. But in our props, we're not actually giving the ID, so we have to actually take the ID and call it. Okay, so there's two ways to do this. Either we define the callback function here. Let me make this nice. Let me format this nicely so you can see all the. Okay, return. These are the current state variables. We need to add another one. So there's two ways. Let me think. We can either delete it straight from a callback here. We can do something like delete recipe. And we just pass in a callback here that takes in handle delete recipe.id. What does this do? So this is actually basically passing down an anonymous callback. Once this button is clicked, it will handle delete and it will automatically pass in the recipe.id. Because when we're mapping the recipes here, we can access the ID variable here, but we can't access it inside the child. This is one way to do it. For example, let's say let me just create a dummy insert first so we can easy to delete. Just for a few more boundaries. I'll do a few so I can delete a few. Okay, so let's say I refresh my front end now. I'll get a lot of junk there. What's the thing? I'll get a lot of junk here. Okay, so let's just delete a few of this. So like here, delete recipe is passed in as an anonymous callback. This anonymous callback itself calls the handle delete function and passes in the recipe.id. And this goes ahead and does the Axios delete, and then it sets the recipes, and then it sets the recipes. Okay, let's destructure the callback here. New recipe. Let's do a button on quick. Just pass in the recipe. Refresh the page. Okay, let's delete one of the. Let's delete pizza maybe. It's gone. That's it. Refresh the page. You should see it's not there anymore. It's actually gone from database. That's one way. That's one way of doing it. Okay, yeah, that's one way of doing it. So delete recipe, and then it deletes from the backend. So it deletes from the backend first to an Axios delete request. Then after that, if everything is okay, then it removes it from the child state. So it doesn't show on the thing anymore. It doesn't show on the body anymore. If not, something goes wrong, if the error code is like 500 or something, then print out the response in the console so the developer can see what went wrong. Okay, so how many of you are able to get this working and delete the recipe already? If you don't wanna mess up your initial one, maybe just make a few dummy ones using Beekeeper and delete those. So I'm gonna delete all my dummy ones. I delete recipe blondies. Delete this, delete this, delete this, delete this, and delete this. And I shouldn't be able to see this anymore. Okay, are you guys able to do it? You want to see the code? This is the handle delete function. So you pass in an anonymous callback here. Once it's clicked, it calls handle delete in the parent state with recipe.id. But we're not going to stop here. We have one more way of writing this function. One more way of writing this function. Delete recipe. We can pass it down and then we can call the. It's actually one more way. Anyone have any idea how to do this other way of deleting instead of passing a callback? Actually, the other way, I just say this, other way is just pass in handle delete down here, destructure handle delete, and then call it here with the ID. But this time we have to pass in the ID as another prop. We could do it even like ID. It's going to be a prop called recipe.id. Then destructure it here, and instead of passing in delete recipe as just a callback function, we can pass in the entire handle delete function itself. Then what we do is we take these two, we take the ID, we take the function, and then call the two. It'll still work. It is another way of looking at it. You guys can try it out on your own and tell me how it works. Okay, so either you can pass in the ID down there, or you can straight away go ahead and do this. Just pass in a callback. And don't forget that every component should have, when you're rendering as a map, you should have a key. And that key is the one that tells the React how to render the component. You can read and Abramov React keys. Talked about this. You can read this tweet. How to copy this? Yeah, read this thread. Why we need keys. This is the one of the guys on the React core team. You can follow him also. Yeah, I teach you why you need keys when you're rendering a map. So what's that? So basically giving the key will help React optimize your front end. If not, you see a warning. I don't use Twitter that much. Okay. Yeah. That's actually it. We implemented read and delete. We can add a form to add. But I want to let you guys try first. We'll try another few minutes. We'll try to add. But let's go it first on this. I'm gonna make a push to that repo. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna do a git add all, git commit, API integration, do a git push origin main. I'll hit a pull first. What's going on? Oh, read me Randy. Okay. So if you guys check out the repository now, you should be able to see my latest code 26 seconds ago. So you can make sure you can copy in or something. Okay, so 5 minutes break at 6 p.m. We'll come back and write the add form and call it a day. Okay, you guys can check out the repo there, and we'll take a short break first. Okay, let's continue. Is everyone okay so far? If you're okay, type yes. If not, no. Everything's okay, just type Y. Error. Okay, that is because make sure your recipes is an empty array, not empty. It's not. I remember I put the empty object, right. Don't put that. Make it an empty array because it causes an error. Make it empty. And make sure you're doing the loading correctly. You can check out the GitHub repo. Check if it's loading, then print loading. If not, then print out all the stuff that comes from the. Actually, I mean, a nice way to format is actually recipes dot filter. This sort of like everything done at one side. Dot map. Okay, good. Dot filter is not a function. Are you sure you're setting the? Make sure your set recipes is like this. Only render it if it's not loading. Make sure the conditioning rendering is there. Only if it's loading, then just print out loading. Only if it's not loading, then take out data and print it. Because if you're printing the recipes without the data actually existing, then it's going to say undefined because React doesn't know where the data is, or the data doesn't exist yet because it's still coming from the backend. The backend has to send the data first, only after that can we print it out. So we use the loading state to check that. If you're using a component library, you can even put a spinner there, so you can see the nice spinning. You would see the instead of loading, you would see a spinning a symbol there. Try the web post code same error. Let me try. Using my exact code, there should not be an error actually. Unless I wait, let me see. All looks fine. Is the repo code updated? Let's see. App.js. It should be fine, huh? SP is loading. It's exactly the same as I have, so can you database object with null attributes? Oh, that could be why. Maybe your database now. Oh, when you insert into database, we don't actually check in the front end. So the thing is, if a certain value is null, the front end will break. By right, when we're destructuring, we should do something like so if we change it to recipe.id, you could do put a what do you call it, a question mark before it. What this does is only if the recipe object exists, then destructure. If not, don't do it. So if you want to play safe, you can just make everything you put the question mark in front of it. Doesn't really matter if you're using the loading state. Doesn't matter, but if you want to be safe, then just go ahead and do this. And your issue should probably be fixed already. So only if the data exists, only if the recipe exists, then destructure it. If not, don't do anything. So you can put a question mark there and try. And also check, as Ivan said, check your database and make sure there's no null. But if you have null, it should also work actually. Technically, it should work because your database object with null attributes. Yeah, make sure you're filling your database correctly. This is the command to add a boundary. I run this a few times to get a few dummy variables. Okay, so let's move on to the add form. Make a new component for this. I'm gonna call it add form.js. You have the React extension. Just type rs React status props. Okay. So now I was talking about prop types are the ones where you can define the types of the variables coming in. So you can say like there should be a string, so like a number, or like name should be a string, so like prop types dot string dot is required, for example. So what this tells React is like, okay, good, yeah. Prop types dot string dot is required means like the name variable should be a string and it should be provided. So let's say you're calling add form and you get the autocomplete telling you to add the name prop, only then the component will work. If you define prop types and a value is not given as per defined here, then it'll throw an error straight away before compiling. So that's why we have prop types. You can read about prop types later, documentation. So next, let's add the form. Form's not going to be fancy. It's just going to be there's actually no CSS for this at all. I thought of using Bootstrap, but then it's an extra package we don't need. So I'm going to make a simple form using HTML. So we have three fields. We're going to have right here. We have name. We have cooking time, and we have ingredients. We have these three fields we need to take in. So it's going to be H1 or not H1, H3, and let's say add new form. I mean, not add new recipe, and define a new HTML form here. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Placeholder is going to be name. You don't need this anymore. I mean, this pure HTML, basically, it's not exactly fancy. Okay. Not a pass label in HTML. Let's call the component here. Maybe call it before, after the search thing. So just type add form and automatically import for you. You get a, yeah, it looks really bad, but wait, is there a CSS for this thing? Input got, let's give it a CSS. Oh, you spelled it wrong. Recipe input. Even better now. Yeah, nicer. So you could do something like a flex box or something. So I would do something like a div. Put this here. Make it a display flex. Display. We can actually do CSS by writing a JavaScript object to display flex. We put the field here saying recipe name, I guess. And doesn't look too great. We put a padding margin or margin right. We give it like 1 rem. So you have like it looks damn bad. It looks really bad, but it works. Okay. Next one, same thing for the recipe cooking time and recipe ingredients. I think it's a bit too much to copy into. So you get this weird looking form on text line center. Let's say text line center. Makes it look nice. The written CSS would be fine already, but we didn't do that, so it doesn't make a difference. So it's fine. Let the form look bad. So we had the name, cooking time, ingredients, and then maybe you can put a margin bottom for each one. Like we could use Bootstrap, but it's an extra package, and we need to install that. And this might as well just write CSS. We don't need margin bottom here also. So as you can see in React, when you're writing inline CSS, you can't actually write a long string when you're doing HTML. So what it does is React will take it as an object. So if you're doing a string HTML, it'll be something like style is equal to, I don't know, a big string, right? For x, margin bottom, or margin bottom, 1 rem, and so on. That's in the plain HTML. But React accepts an object. That object also takes in CSS. But just like margin bottom, instead of like a dash in between, it's going to be a camel case. Doing a submit button here. It also looks very bad. Okay, the submit button. So we have a few form fields and a submit button. So when this is quick, we have to send it to the backend, right? But another problem here, as someone mentioned just now, the state is actually lifted. All the recipes are stored inside the parent component, not the child. So we need to somehow find a way to add a new recipe and at the same time append it to the parent state. So what I would recommend is we actually write the handle add inside the parent and pass it down. So I would do something like const handle add, and this time there's no actually, I mean, you can take in the parameters like name, cooking time, and ingredients. And we would do something like axios.pol, yeah, exactly, sp.recipe. If you're wondering how I got that, it's actually GitHub Copilot. It gives you some kind of like snippets of code automatically, so you can. Okay, so HTML 5000 recipe such recipe post name time ingredients response. Okay, let's just do a. Because now the backend is sending back the. Because on the backend is sending back our newly created one. It does not send back a newly created one. It just sends back saying it's created. So we need to automatically increment. What's the best way to do this? Because it's not sending back the new one. We could generate the ID ourselves. Let's see. Let's just do a returning all and see what happens. Give me a second. Let's go to the backend. And when it's done, we instead of just sending back the new instead of just sending back news to be added, let's actually send back everything. Let's do a insert into and then do a returning all. So we do a results.rows, I guess. 201 and then do a results.rows. So we go to Postman and try this out. Right, I close that. Yeah. So it sends back a new one. Okay, nice. So now that our backend is configured to, so just add the returning all to your insert. So we get back the newly created one also. Just copy this in for you. It's like after inserting and return back the one you just created. So our front end can store it. So now we get the response inside response for data. It's a list, right? It's coming back as a list to the front end. We need to grab it as a list then. So we just need to do a set recipes with a new. I mean, if the response status code is 401, if response dot status is equal to 201, which means successfully created, then let's go ahead and do a set recipes, and let's do a string concatenation, and not string concatenation, list, yeah, response for data first entry. Okay, what does this do? It takes the existing recipes and then appends it to the new one. You do this spread operator. Just search JS list spread. That's what it's called. Add recipes. Put the existing recipes inside there. Then add the new one also. Response or data index 0, because we're indexing to 0 because it comes back as a list, right? So we need to index out the first element of this list. Okay, so if it's 201, then the recipes, blah blah blah. Else, obviously, console log the response so we can see what went wrong. Okay, so we got a handle add. Now we just need to pass this down. We need to pass this operator down to our recipe. Add form component. We're going to write handle add is going to be handle add. We just need to call it from here. Add form. So props is going to, let's destructure the props out of there. Then we need to write our own, yeah. So we need to store the local state for each of this here. So we need to const name, set name, time. String. It's going to be a input on change. Just to e set name e dot target dot value. Hope you guys are still with me. Just let me know if I'm going a bit too fast or the ingredients e dot target dot value. Is there a simple way to yeah. Okay, so every time there's changes, every time one of these input fields changes, it'll set the state automatically. Then we can access them in the handle add. So we just do a one click here. It's gonna be handle add. Pass in our name, cooking time, and ingredients. So this will send the thing to the stop level state. Okay, so we have two input fields. Every time this value changes, it will set the state. Well, it will set the state here on an onChange method. OnChange set the name, OnChange set cooking time, OnChange set the ingredients. Once you hit the submit button, it'll call the handle add with these three parameters and pass it up. So let's just check it out. I haven't actually tried this yet. Let's try. Oh wait, actually it's going to be pass int, right? Because it's going to be a decimal. So in the handle add, we need to go ahead and do a cooking time is pass float cooking time because it's expecting a decimal. Let's try dummy 3, dummy 1, ingredient 1, 2, 3. When you're loading, and you'll be able to see the new one there. Okay, another one, it also work. Yeah. Did I go way too fast and was citing a few people? Okay. How is it? Are you guys able to add? Or let me just push the code here. Wait. I'm gonna check out the repo. You'll be able to see the new code. Even do a prevent the page from refreshing, then you just do a prevent default or something. I'm gonna add a new dummy 4, 1, 2, 3. It's just a matter of that did not go to as we expected. Okay, just move the okay. Why did that set as a what's that as a string? Wait. Okay. Okay. How many of you are still with me? How many of you it's working or why for yes and for no? That's it. In terms of content, we covered quite a bit. So we've done creating, reading, and deleting. Only update is left, but we're not going to update today, so that's fine. Okay. Any questions? Anyone is still with me, or you can check out the code there. Can I get some response? Why for yes and for no? Any issues? Any questions? Only one person's there. Okay. Actually, the plan wasn't even to have the ad form. I did it like on the spot because we had an extra time, so this wasn't actually part of the plan. So yeah, so it extended a bit. If you want, you can see the code here and also on GitHub. Okay. Is everyone else okay? That's actually it for today. Actually, for this week, I mean, in terms of content, that's it. But all the stuff you've learned this week, there's going to be a chance to win some prizes. There are some. There's actually a quiz after this. No, not a serious quiz, but During the closing ceremony, we're giving away some swag and some free something. I know what is Hakim is gonna he's gonna have a small quiz later on Kahoot, so you guys should come for the closing ceremony. In terms of content, that's it. Any questions you guys can ask, or you can email me also can, or message me on Discord. That's actually the best option. Or put in the questions GS week also, and any one of us can help you with your question. Thank you for staying with me this whole time. I don't know how many of you are still here, but yeah, I know it's pretty fast at sometimes, but yeah, thank you for listening.